Good evening. Noting the time and the presence of a quorum, I'd like to call this June 2nd, 2025 meeting of the Acton Select Board to order. We'll start out, as we always do, with a few moments for resident concerns. If anybody has any issues they'd like to raise with the Select Board that would not be covered under the agenda, please step forward. We're doing a 3-minute comment period.
Ann Chang, and as Kelly's Corner gets closer to being finished, I know that you are calling that road, which I used to call No Name Road, you're calling it Community Way. And I was just wondering if you would call it Carol Spinney Way, please.
I will respond to that, which is uncommon, but yes, the intention is, town meeting did vote to change the name to Carol Spinney Way. My understanding is once the title for the property is transferred from the Commonwealth to the town, we will be having some sort of a ceremony. Thank you.
Hi folks, Leela Ramachandran. Usually I watch your meetings on YouTube, so it's nice to be here in person. And I'm speaking as an individual right now. Today I spent hours canvassing, talking to residents, and sharing information about the Luce hotline, which people can call if they suspect ICE. I also witnessed at least 6 vehicles and plenty of masked men who refused to identify themselves. They were staking out a local business, parked illegally, and blocking traffic. And finally, at around 11 a.m., they took 2 people who both have documentation to be here. Today, because of federal agents acting in fascist ways, I had to hold an elementary student sobbing in my arms and clinging onto his dad's hat that agents carelessly tossed into their landscaping vehicle before driving away with our neighbors. He watched it all happen and collapsed into me, barely getting the words out as he said they took my dad. I am a grown-ass woman, and I had to call my mom because I can't understand how violent and unfair these situations are, and it feels like we're just letting it happen. These actions are making me feel less safe, and they're terrorizing our communities. Today, a federal agent also threatened to arrest me while I was standing a distance back and filming, which according to the courts is a permissible and protected action. I hope that each and every one of you will do everything in your power to keep residents safe, because that's not how people are feeling right now. I am willing to risk a lot to keep my neighbors safe, and I hope that you and other residents are willing to do the same.
Thank you.
Now putting on a different hat. So for those watching at home, I'm Tori Campbell. I am a school committee member, and I'm here with...
And I'm Leela Ramachandran, also in the school committee. We want to thank the Select Board and members of our community for support and advocating for education funding that reflects growing needs, and also pushing for reform to the state's Chapter 70, which is a funding formula. That advocacy is paying off. While Chapter 70 generally provides $30 per student annually, both House and Senate versions actually of the budget now propose $150 per student for FY26. The Senate is pushing for a commission to review the funding formula, which is a longer-term solution than just 1 year. That's critical for communities like ours, which are considered affluent and otherwise seeking more and more of an education funding burden pushed to the local level. And we know that trend just isn't sustainable.
So Budget Saturday, we committed to reducing the town's assessment by $150,000 if the state aid increased, and we expect that increase to happen. So we're going to follow through on that promise. The remaining state aid will help us address special education needs that have arisen since February, and also to restore a few essential staff positions. You should have received a memo from Adam Klein that outlines our proposed budget amendment. We're going to discuss it this Thursday at our June 5th meeting, and we're planning to vote on it on June 12th. And we're here to tell you about this because we recognize that with Thursday meetings for the school committee and Monday meetings for the select board, if this is something you want to put on your agenda, you might want to know about that. Once we've had that vote on June 12th, you can expect our treasurer, Sherry Matthews, to send you the revised budget. It should reflect a higher total, but a lower town assessment. The memo also outlines the options for considering the amendment. You could call a town meeting within 45 days, or if no meeting is called, the amendment would automatically take effect after that period. Because this decision impacts hiring, if you do not intend to call a town meeting, we would really appreciate it if you could let us know that so we can move ahead with filling those critical positions without delay. Otherwise, we risk losing people who would not know they had a continuing position and then having to hire somebody completely new. We really appreciate your partnership in making this possible. We look forward to working together to address all of the challenges ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Manager, just make a note that we might want to have an agenda item to discuss at our, I think it's our June 16th meeting. Thank you. They have their hand raised? Yes. Okay. Online caller, we'd be happy to hear from you.
Hi, good evening. Martin Benson, can you hear me?
Yeah, we just need to adjust the audio here in the room. Okay, try again, Marty.
Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Perfect. Okay. Tonight, I would like to address a recent action of the Select Board which constituted an impermissible infringement on the citizens' free speech rights. At the recent town meeting, question number 1 pertained to the funding and construction of a new public works building. The Acton Select Board was in favor of the question, whereas the Finance Committee opposed it. In the weeks before town meeting, Finance Committee member Greg Jarbo submitted a letter to the Acton Exchange outlining the committee's objections to the proposed question. Additionally, he was recorded reading his statement by ActonTV, who later posted the video on its YouTube account. Soon thereafter, the Finance Committee was contacted by Town Council and were informed that the sharing of Mr. Jarbo's recorded statement violated campaign finance laws. The Finance Committee was advised that it should request that ActonTV remove all links of the recorded video. However, the Acton Select Board's video statement supporting question number 1 was permitted to remain on ActonTV's YouTube site. Multiple Select Board members justified this decision by citing a previous March 15, 2024 memorandum written by Town Council regarding FinCom's position on last year's override. The memo concluded by saying, quote, FinCom may not distribute this presentation or other material regarding the override to, quote, voters beyond the scope of such meetings, end full quote. This memo cites this quote from page 13 of the OCPF Campaign Finance Guide. However, the full sentence on page 13 actually reads, quote, they are not, however, allowed to distribute such materials to voters beyond the scope of such meetings at public expense, end quote. Mr. Jarbo's written statement and YouTube video filmed by ActonTV did not come at the public's expense, and thus both were permissible under campaign finance laws. By omitting the phrase, quote, at public expense, end quote, Town Council and the Select Board materially misrepresented the campaign finance law to insinuate that Mr. Jarbo was not permitted to share his opinion as a member of FinCom, when in actuality, the Campaign Finance Guide makes it clear that the laws do not, quote, restrict the speech of public officials concerning a ballot question, end quote. In fact, the guide notes that, quote, if public officials were not allowed to discuss or take positions on ballot questions that affect the public they serve, they would be hampered in that service, end quote. The misrepresentation of this law effectively hampered Mr. Jarbo's service to the town and its citizens. What is evidently clear is that the Select Board did not want this opposing viewpoint to be shared in the marketplace of ideas prior to town meeting.
1 minute.
The Select Board's material misrepresentation of this law in an attempt to coerce the Finance Committee to remove this video was a blatant act of viewpoint discrimination. This board owes Mr. Jarbo an apology. Further, these illegal speech restrictions implemented by the Select Board need to cease as they are an attack on individual free speech rights, as well as the bedrock principles of our democratic republic. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, Mr. Chair. Sorry, there are 3 people online, none with their hand raised.
Thank you. So, moving to our next item, chair update. A couple of items I'd like to raise with my colleagues, just to think about, and we'll probably put these on as agenda items at a later time. The first item is I'd like to get the opinion of the select board about changing the start time of our meetings, making them earlier in the evening, perhaps 6 or 6:30. Think about how that might impact your schedule and how it might impact the public's ability to participate. Along the same lines, we have an issue with many of our boards and committees that are provided with town staff. A lot of our town staff, frankly, is overwhelmed. Many of them have 3 or 4 night meetings a week. And what we'd like to do is see if there's a possibility to move some of those meetings to either earlier in the evening or daytime meetings. Again, something to think about, maybe reach out to the committees that you liaise with to see if any of that would work. Our town staff, particularly the planning division, is spread incredibly thin. And we're just wearing these people out. I think now with the ability of lots of folks to be able to Zoom into meetings, even if they're still at their workday, this might be a possibility, so it's something to think about. Moving on to your liaison assignments with various boards and committees, it's really important to always keep an eye on your committees to see how they stand as far as membership, whether they're falling behind, whether they're having quorum issues, whether they need to have new members. Certainly, the VCC and Select Board in general and town manager's staff are always looking for volunteers. But if you know of any specific instances for any of the boards and committees that you deal with, where either they're running into a problem or if you as an individual have some people in mind that might do well to serve in the committees, I'd encourage you to bring that information forward just to get all those committees fully staffed up. And finally, I don't recall if I discussed this at a previous meeting or if I'm remembering from a couple of years back. As far as responding to emails, if an email comes into the select board in general, as chair, I would respond to it, or I would delegate it to someone that might be a subject matter expert. So just so that we all get lots of emails and you don't have to worry about responding unless I ask you to. It's important to give these responses as quickly as possible, and even if it's just an acknowledgement, I'll take that on as chair. That's all that I have, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a thanks to the Community Preservation Committee. We have, there's a lot of work that goes into making decisions about projects, and I just wanted to mention that there are 10 projects that town meeting recently approved that were recommended by CPC that are directly going to impact and benefit town departments, including many others that are indirectly going to help what we're doing here. So I just want to thank them for supporting those 10 initiatives and all the others that they continue to do. I also wanted to just mention that as an organization, I've talked in budget hearings and into board members about recruitment and retention issues that we're facing in certain areas of the organization, public safety, fire department, public works. I'm disappointed to report that it's now becoming an organization-wide concern. And we're a great place to work. the people that work here feel very supported by the residents and certainly by the select board and by other folks. I think we pay competitively. I know we pay competitively. And so I'm working with staff, and I've had some sessions with department heads to try to understand things we can do differently, to try to, you know, as an organization advances, it needs to evolve a little bit. And I think the way that we've been doing things for the last 10, 15 years may need to change a little bit. We introduced remote work as an option a few years ago, or we introduced it during the pandemic, and we allowed it to stay because there was some benefits to it. And I think we need to look at doing some more things along those lines to try to maintain a competitive edge with neighboring communities that have similar jobs at similar pay that maybe have different parts of the job that may be more attractive to people from a work-life balance standpoint. So I'm planning to come to the board at the next meeting with some proposals and things that we'd like to roll out this summer. And I just wanted to mention that now and encourage you to provide any input or ideas that you have in the meantime to help so that we can start next year on a track with maybe some different programs and ideas that keep people excited to be here. Thank you.
Update from the Assistant Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the projects that John had mentioned for CPC funding is a town hall gutter replacement and repair project. And I'm sure as you walked in, you noticed there's a large boom lift on the Woodbury side and quite a bit of work that's going on. We're pretty happy to say that that project's begun. They're working their way around the building. The contractor started on the library side, and they're coming around the Woodbury side. We anticipate them to continue for the next few weeks. There's some replacements of the wood gutter that have to be done. It's a special gutter, so it'll be sent out, so you'll see a little bit of a delay, but we're happy that the project's continuing. The entrances will remain safe and accessible throughout the project. If anybody has any questions about the project, feel free to contact the town manager's office. It may not feel like it right now, but the season is beginning at NARA. It's a little cold out, but hopefully this weekend the weather will hold up. They're anticipating kicking off the beach season there. We do want to remind residents, if you're interested in season tags, those are on sale at actonrec.com, or you're welcome to reach out to the rec department directly. Staying with recreation, their summer concert series kicks off in about a month with the July 4th celebration. The band that'll be playing is 36 Red. Throughout the day, there'll be food trucks on site and a bunch of different activities. And then at night, it'll be capped off by our annual fireworks ceremony. More information will be sent through news flashes and on the town website. So we invite people to keep checking back or reach out to the town manager's office in the next few weeks as well for more information, specifically about parking and shuttle service as well. And the last update we have for you, the intersection construction over at Prospect and Main Street is scheduled to begin at the end of the month, June 23rd that week. The construction schedule is anticipated to last between 6 and 8 weeks, weather dependent. As you know, this was proposed at town meeting last year for funding for capital. It's been, design's been worked on the last few months. We have a contractor who's slated to begin, and the improvements will focus on pedestrian and vehicular safety, making that a more accessible and easier route to use for people both leaving Prospect Street and entering Prospect Street. If anyone's interested in viewing the plans, they're available at actonma.gov/DPW. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from my colleagues. David.
Thank you. I just wanted to call everyone's attention to two things. The Metro West Regional Transit Authority has established a shuttle service that runs at rush hours and connects the South Acton train station to Hudson, Marlborough, Southborough, and Hopkinton. And that includes stops at on the Worcester Line MBTA at Southborough and the Franklin Line MBTA at Forge Park. So if you're interested in finding out more, you can go to mwrta.com. And I just want to call attention to a feature of the Acton Exchange that started a little while ago. It's the new calendar feature. You can go to actonexchange.org/calendar. And it has many community events in that calendar, not regularly occurring town meetings, but most other things that are happening in town. So go there, take a look. I think it's a useful feature.
Thank you. Alyssa?
Thank you. Typically, I reserve member minute to let people know what's going on with boards and committees and organizations, but I just wanted to take an opportunity to use this platform to talk about the immigration enforcement that's happening. The Office of the Attorney General just released new guidance for both immigrants and communities on Thursday, May 29th. And I encourage everyone to review it on the state website, mass.gov. I'd also like to encourage everybody to think about immigrant neighbors, people who live in your neighborhood, people that you work with, people you see in the library, the grocery store, the playground, because as we heard from a resident tonight, those people are not feeling safe. They're also not feeling very welcome. I'm hearing from a lot of constituents, people who have been here for decades even, highly educated, highly skilled people who are working in the US, had children here, even retiring, working as engineers, doctors, attorneys. They don't feel particularly welcome when they are hearing and reading intolerant rhetoric about immigrants. So check in with them. Let them know that you're glad that they're here. Ask them if they need any support. People who are feeling in need can reach out to Town Services. Our DEI director, I know, has already been in touch with people. We also have a community services staff person. And just for everyone who's interested in helping a little bit more, there is a hotline, LUCE, L-U-C-E, that folks can call if they spot any agents, activity here in Acton or anywhere in your travels at work. You can call in activity and they'll send verifiers out. You can also take a verifier training if you'd like to be a verifier. And we're not intervening in any of these operations. It's just to verify and document because it allows immigrant communities to live some semblance of a normal life, and also we get information and that can help in the legal avenues that these families need to pursue. You can also write into your legislators to support legislation that helps immigrant families. One is establishing a legal aid fund, the Safe Communities Act, Location Shield to prevent agencies from using your cell phone data to know where you are at all times. Something that's really been frustrating for me is hearing the narrative about immigration, how it should happen, the right way. Immigration, our system in the US is pretty broken. It's a big mess. Rules change. I've talked with people who have been here for decades and they told me stories about coming here with student visas and the rules changed in the middle of their schooling. They didn't even get through 4 years before changes occurred and requirements shifted. And I just wanted to also share a personal experience that's really shaped my perspective. I have a family member who came here the right way. She came on a tourist visa to visit her brother, who lived in Lowell, and she overstayed that visa. So she was living in the community without the proper documentation. She was working in the community, serving coffee, bagging groceries, working as a home health aide. She took English lessons, she took citizenship classes. She's now a citizen living in another state, married to one of my relatives. and she works in healthcare. She's a phlebotomist, and she's so good that she trains other people. So this personal connection has really shaped how I view folks that are coming into the United States. And I think that it's really worthwhile remembering that, you know, we all do better when we support one another and lift each other up. Thanks.
Thank you. Jim?
The town is planning a launch event for the Minuteman Regional Bike Share with Concord, Lincoln, and Maynard. The event will be at East Acton Village Green from 10 to 11 a.m. on Friday, June 13. Attendees can try out the bikes and meet local businesses and organizations located along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, and this will include at least 2 accessible bikes, and the program will expand to include more. On a related but different note, I'm happy to remind folks that online reservation of a variety of accessible bikes at NARA is available now. The most popular bike there is the side-by-side bike, by the way, which I recommend. We had our first monument marking event today. 3 folks from Littleton and 4 folks from Acton located the monuments on our town's shared border on Fort Pond Road, Nagog Hill Road, Newtown Road, and the most exciting one at the south edge of Nagog Pond in the middle of the woods and in the middle of a sloping field of boulders. These monuments now have the year 2025 painted on them on both the Littleton and Acton sides. And where we could find the chiseled year of the monument installation year, Dean carefully painted that as well. And in all 3 cases, that year was 1831. At the May 19 meeting, next item, at the May 19 meeting, we had a pair of hearings about gas line replacements with a lot of unresolved questions. So I wanted my board members and people to know that I've just started an exchange with David Martin, and we're in touch with a lot of different subject matter experts to gather information. And we might be asking for time at a future agenda to talk more about pipeline replacement, repair, and non-pipeline alternatives. And finally, I wanted to thank Alyssa for your leadership on the immigration issue.
Thank you. Fran?
I just wanted to say that tomorrow evening, June 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Acton Recreation Center located at 50 Audubon Hill, the Economic Development Committee will be hosting RKG Associates, who will be presenting a final plan release. RKG was hired by the town of Acton after a vote at town meeting to develop a strategic economic development action plan, CDAP, aimed at guiding the town's economic growth and business diversification from 2024 to 2034. The plan combines market trends, stakeholder interviews, and public engagement, incorporating feedback from both the business community and residents. It outlines key findings, initial recommendations, and an actionable implementation matrix to support informed decision-making by the town. The town of Acton is seeking your feedback on the final draft, and I think the deadline is 12 p.m. tomorrow night for final feedback. They'll have a virtual, you'll be able to Zoom in as well if you can't make it in person. And I also wanted to speak to, I had the opportunity to attend an informational workshop relating to the recent ICE activity in Acton put together by Leela Ramachandran, our own Alyssa Nickel, and Lorena Betts of the Peacemakers Network last Sunday. It was an extremely well-attended, I might tear up, sorry, event for holiday weekend, and it was extremely community building. Sorry. Folks are exhausted, scared, and feeling powerless. Sorry, I have to take a deep breath. And are really wanting to understand how they can be helpful. And this event answered a lot of those questions. Sorry. I can't see through my tears. And I just lost my screen.
sorry. I just wanted to thank them. I think there's a lot of misinformation floating around. It was helpful to identify different insignias on, what we're calling ICE federal agents. I think that the packed room just told me that people just need to find a way to be helpful and not powerless. And I thought that your work, Leela, and Alyssa, your constant community outreach is incredible. And I want to thank you for that. I had more, but it's black. My screen is black. So I think that there are numbers to call. I would bug our Attorney General nonstop, literally. That is what I would recommend.
Thank you. We'll move to our first item of new and special business. Discuss and vote on request for filing fee reimbursement, Goddard Consulting, 12 Spring Hill Road. Mr. Manager?
Yes, actually, Conservation Agent Olivia Barksdale is here to answer any questions about this, and she will briefly introduce what it is.
Hello, thank you. As again, my name is Olivia Barksdale, the Conservation Agent, and I'm here to answer any questions about the 12 Hill Road NOI that we received back in November 2024 that was promptly ended in March of this year.
Thank you. Jim?
No questions, just an appreciation for the clear way you laid out the request and the amount of time that town already had to put into this project, and thus your recommendation that that we not do this fee reimbursement. I appreciated the clear logic behind it.
Other comments? David?
Yes, this is a good example, I think, of why I've been concerned about these fee reimbursements, and I think we need to develop, work on developing a little bit of a policy here. But I am definitely against reimbursing this fee, and the numbers that Agent Barksdale has put together here show that in this particular case, even with the fee, we've lost money out of our permitting funds. And if we refund, some permits that are maybe the time necessary to satisfy one permit, if we refund the leftover, if you will, and can't collect more on the others, we're not funding then the people in land use and elsewhere that do our permitting for us. So I agree with the recommendation from the conservation agent and think we should deny this.
Alyssa?
Thanks for coming in. I thought it was important for us to discuss this because of what David mentioned, setting a precedent and sometimes going ahead and refunding fees. And in this case, it sounds like the recommendation is not to, and I'm anticipating the board will vote that way. But I did have a question because I went back to look at the Conservation Commission packets, the application for 12 Spring Hill Road, and I noticed that there were other denials in the past, and I was just wondering, were there requests for refunds for any of those application fees or filing fees or anything like that? That was way before your time here with us in Acton, so I don't know if the manager knows, but just wanting to know if there were requests and if there were, whether or not they had been approved or denied.
That is something I can absolutely look into. I know I just started in July, so this is my first interaction with the applicant. As you did state, they have applied before. And in my crossover with Mike Gendron, the previous conservation agent, there wasn't a mention of a refund during his time when they applied under his tenure, but I can definitely follow up.
Okay, that'd be great. And I just also wanted to be clear that the folks, if they're just looking in the select board meeting packet, they'll just see the request for the reimbursement from the consultant, Goddard, but the applicant for the project is Westchester Housing, I think is what the name of the company is. And then there's also a different property owner, so the applicant is not yet the property owner. So just want to make sure that folks are clear about who it is that is involved in the project. And I would also just say that I support denying the request.
Thank you. I will acknowledge that as Select Board's liaison to the Conservation Commission for the past 6 years, this particular property has come up repeatedly, very contentious. We're basically playing whack-a-mole with them. So I would also favor denying this request for reimbursement. Fran?
I just have a quick question in that is it customary to reimburse legal fees? I mean, that's already spent, that's gone.
Charge him?
So I wouldn't vote in favor of reimbursing any fees. Yeah.
So but part of the permitting, I mean, the planning division regularly consults with council when necessary on applications that have legal questions to them. And so it's not that there are always legal fees, but in this case, there are some. And, you know, that's just an indication that the fees, the expenses on each permit vary. They're not always going to be exactly the same as the permit fee.
I'd be willing to entertain a motion. David?
Yeah, I move that we deny the fee reimbursement to Goddard Consulting for their permit at 12 Spring Hill Road.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Not, I'll call for vote. All in favor of denial, please say aye.
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 In favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda is a listening session for Select Board goals. This is an annual event. We always like to listen to folks, but this is a formal opportunity for people to bring ideas forward. We have received a number of emails already, which is a great way for folks to comment. The actual goal-setting meeting will be next Monday, starting at 4 p.m. at the Memorial Library in the trustees' room. It is a public meeting, but we will not be taking input from the public during that meeting. It's more of a workshop for the Select Board and the town manager. Again, I do acknowledge that we've received a number of a variety of comments from folks with ideas what our goals should be. I would also refer folks to the town website. There is a link there to all of our previous goals that have been approved for probably the last 6 or 8 years. And before we get into the public comment period, I'll acknowledge a message from the town manager dated today, status update on Select Board goals. Mr. Manager, if you'd care to just give us a précis on this, just to put us, let us know how we've been doing so far, that would be great.
Yes, thank you. The packet, has the memo in it. I think overall, the short-term goals this year, we had a manageable number, and we, I think, worked through most of them. Tax relief for seniors, the goal was to explore additional programs. I think we did more of trying to amplify and let more people know about the existing ones. We did have some conversation. I had some conversations, and I know members of the board individually had conversations with residents with different ideas for how to move forward with new programs, and I expect that to continue in the new year. Another goal was related to complete streets improvements, Powder Mill Corridor, West Acton Village, River Street, Chadwick Street, Great Road. There are other streets, including those, and we've made progress on all of those through our proactive planning and design work. We were able to get the state to fund major intersection improvements along Great Road. I think a $2+ million project that they're starting this calendar year, I believe, where they'll do some road narrowing of intersections to make them safer for pedestrians, and some other, looking at adding more of the Hawk signal systems, like the one that we have near Donlands. They'll be adding a few more of those. Those are all projects that are underway now with state funding instead of our own. And Tom mentioned earlier that Prospect Street is under construction at the end of this month. West Acton Village and Powder Mill, the design process is well underway. The third goal was about the DPW project. It was to bring it to town meeting. It was brought to town meeting. I think in the form it ultimately was presented, it was approved, and that form was to advance the design and do some additional work to see what to bring forward to a future town meeting. And so I see progress there, even though that night it might not have felt like progress to some of us that were working on it all year long. It certainly was progress. The fourth item was investigate holding satellite locations for town meeting. There's some complications to that we are working through. I think the new voting technology that we acquired will allow it one less obstacle for us to deal with if we were to do that. And if you look at what we did this year, we successfully had a video participant in town meeting, which we had never done before. So I feel like we're ready to look further into this going forward now, once we have some of those technological barriers sorted out. We also looked, the fifth goal was to complete the River Street Park. The structures and the major components of that project have been completed, and now we're doing sort of the finish work. It's a beautiful addition to South Acton, and I hope that we can all enjoy it this fall. This fall. The fish are enjoying it. The fish are swimming upstream now instead of being stopped by the dam. So that's good. And then the volunteer process, onboarding and developing a volunteer handbook. Those are projects that we started and then did not finish, but I think that we've made progress on those and look forward to continuing to work on that this year. And the sign bylaw, staff has looked at the sign bylaw and some of the concerns that are raised on a regular basis by residents and business owners. And I think we're ready to talk to the board about that next year, about anything to bring forward to town meeting. So that was the 7 short-term goals. There were also a handful of long-term goals, looking at fire and EMS staffing and deployment. We certainly made progress on that with the pilot study and the $90,000 grant that we received to look at that. Another goal was related to housing instability, or programs and services that address housing insecurity. We rolled out the monthly legal clinic, which I just got today, another thank you note from, not to me, but to the town for that program, because another person was able to work through some of the legal paperwork to figure out a place to live and deal with an issue that they were having. And there's been the clinics have only been running since a few months, and we've had several people that have already been helped from it. So it's a big success there, and we'll continue to try new things like that. We have a third long-term goal, which was the stormwater infrastructure. RAC is taking the lead on that at your direction. There was a public forum the other night, so we'll see where we go from there. We also had more Main Street project improvements, which we're working through. Number 5 was to identify and implement changes to discourage single-family construction on large lots. I think that we've made progress on that through the Habitat for All. And that was approved. We have to get it approved by the Attorney General, but the people here supported it, so that's progress. We wanted to look at the 10-year plan for the Human Services and Senior Center. because the lease expires, or doesn't expire, but the lease needs to be renewed this year. I think we've thought about it and talked about it a lot. There hasn't been a ton of discussion with the board about it, but I think at this point, we're planning to renew it for at least another 5 years, and we would look forward to ideas that you all have for what to do after that. We certainly could break earlier if we had a better idea in the next 5 years, but I don't see one coming forward fast enough to allow us to continue what we're doing in that building. It will go up a little bit. I think it goes up $29,000 after the renewal, but we have been aware of that, and it's in our budget. It's in our budget plan. The budget is just being started. Then we have number 7 is looking at public transportation. We did a taxi pilot program during this plan year, or this goal year. It was pretty successful, and we learned a lot. We learned about some of the needs that we have and ways that we could target them if we just had funding. And so that was useful. And the last long-term goal was to advance town meeting participation and education improvements. I think we made substantial improvements to the warrant document, and I would love to say that it resulted in a larger attendance at town meeting, but it did not. We had a tenth of the people at this town meeting that we had last year. But I think that might be related to other circumstances. So I do think we'll continue to advance ways to get more people at town meeting and make it easier to understand for residents that don't follow this every week, why town meeting is important and why they should check it out. So those are the goals, and that's the brief status update.
Thank you. Alyssa?
Thanks. Just before we take public comment, I just wanted to note a couple of things that are confusing for me. John, you said that we had remote participation for the first time. Didn't we have 2 remote participants at town meeting last year?
Yeah,
that
we did. So
my-
we've had remote participation, but we've never had video remote participation where they showed up on the screen and you could see them and hear them.
Got it. Okay, thank you for clearing that up. And also, I think that there is a mystery with the fish, because I had been sharing that information that the trout and the catfish were now in the stream and, making their way over the dam, but somebody reminded me that further upstream in the impoundment area, like across Main Street, they are stocking fish. So we got to get to the bottom of that, because I think they may just be coming down from there. But I know that.
But they couldn't do that before.
That's true. Our Nature Watch guy for the Acton Exchange is very interested, so maybe he'll do some investigation for us.
David?
So they stock the trout every year, and catfish and eel occur naturally now. There probably used to be other kinds of fish, but catfish and eel occur naturally, and they were found actually on both sides of the dam during construction.
Okay, awesome.
All right. If there's anybody in the room who would like to step forward with some suggested goals, now is a great time. Not so much. Right. We'll go, I believe it was Richard Kelleher is online and would like to comment. Go ahead, Richard.
Hello, thank you for being there. I would be there, but I've contracted COVID. I actually got a rebound case of it, unfortunately. That's why I wasn't at church, Jim. Any rate, I just submitted 2 suggestions, one for myself personally, about preserving naturally occurring affordable housing, and the other one for the Design Review Board regarding odd-shaped lots, especially the latter. It was passed by town meeting in 2023. So this is getting long in the tooth, and we think it's time for us to address it. So we'd like to work with the planning department on getting something on the next warrant. Do you need anything more from me? I hope you've all seen them or will see them shortly.
Yes, we have. I know I got your memo, so thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you for your consideration.
Do we have a second caller lined up? You please identify yourself, and we'd be happy to hear your ideas.
Hi, it's Deborah Symes, pardon me, 109 Concord Road. I managed to get a letter, an email off to you guys today. I didn't get to the second thing I wanted to do because I ran out of day, but let me say it out loud, which is first to say that I appreciate Jim's and David's pursuit of more and more accurate information about the state of gas line repair, replacement, et cetera, in town. So I appreciate that. And I don't know the exact form. And maybe in this next week, it'll come to me in a flash and I'll write it down in a more cogent way. But I would like it if you guys could come up with a goal that would address the municipality's ability to respond to grid requests in a way that comports better with our climate action plan, our declaration of a climate emergency. So briefly, that's really what I want. And if I can say things more articulately in the coming days before next week, I will. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Brewster Koenig Jr., Main Street. Just kind of a global thing. I haven't participated in this before. Are there any kind of metrics that you try and work by in terms of global ways of reducing the tax burden on people in town? Looking at the most recent numbers for the 350 odd towns and cities in Massachusetts, we're number 20 in terms of the most expensive places for per family household tax burden. And I'd like to see something that kind of tries to acknowledge that and tries to get us lower on that list in terms of can we reduce these things and avoid any kind of future, 2.5 overrides. I think that's part of the reason why the DPW went down, is that people are fatigued by this. So I would really encourage something that would be a metric or a goal as opposed to we'll try, something that's a little bit more maybe attainable. On a completely separate note, more of making an economic development type of thing. The community I used to live in up in Canada used to have something that was called Open Doors Waterloo, Kitchener-Waterloo, and where you would have basically the university, manufacturers, Google, steel plants, gyms, whatever, having, one day where you went around town and you got to see everybody's operation. I think that one might be help out a little bit, maybe with people knowing what's what around town, and maybe be a little bit of community building. But it was a very successful thing up there. People have unique things that they show in terms of whether or not it was energy saving heat pumps or, there are a lot of different things here. But it was on a more of a, I'll say, commercial type of thing or public type of thing. Go see the DPW, go see this. I just thought and people just make their way around it. So those are my 2 comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brewster, I would love to ask you a question about one of your comments. Because you said that Acton is in the top 20 or so most expensive places for households in the area. I just want to confirm, are you referring to the tax rate, the amount that's taxed on each $1,000 after, or are you, like, total tax bill? Because, for example, Concord, next door, their tax rate is $13 something per 1,000, which is lower than Acton's $17, but their average tax bill is $5,000 more. So when you say most expensive,
Okay.
I'm just wondering, what is that top 20 metric that you're referring to?
This is when we were talking about the budget last year and things like this is what the finance department was referring to. It's the State of Massachusetts Data Analytics and Resources Bureau Community Comparison Report. Okay, and then in that, I can give you the link for it, send it in afterwards. You know, they basically break down everything in terms of all the different expenses and the total budget expenditure. And then one of those columns says the average single-family household tax rate. Okay, well, so it's like, I don't have, unfortunately, that was the piece that didn't print out here, but I think it was like 14,000 or something like that. And so it's not, when you say the rate, you're right, it's not the increment, it's, you know, this is the bill you actually have to do there. So, you know, this is, I mean, the other thing that I would have added here too is that last year when we were talking about the school budget, you know, that's such a big part of our overall budget. And on the same thing here, it shows up as being 66.9% of Acton's budget goes to schools. And out of the 300 or so various towns that we have here, some of which didn't have numbers for 2024, we're number 4 on that list in terms of how much we spend on that. So I guess I would also encourage you, could we try and get that more in line with something that is, you know, doesn't put us in the top percentiles of, I think, more expense than we need to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or ideas, either from folks in the room or out online? Okay, well, certainly if folks have thoughts, I'd encourage you to send them to the Select Board, sb@actonma.gov. We are going to be meeting next Monday, starting at 4 o'clock at the Memorial Library. Just if folks do have ideas they'd like to send to us, certainly if you send them in the next few days, that would be great, because it would give us a chance to sort through them and absorb that information. Thank you very much. We'll move to our next item. Review the charter for Acton Leadership Group. I'll let the town manager lead off on this.
Thank you. This is just an item for the board to, before it all starts, for the board to give an opportunity to touch base with its 2 representatives about the ALG process. It's a tradition, unlike any other, where we've had 30-plus years of collaboration between the school, the regional school committee, the finance committee, and the select board. And what's unique about it is that every single year, they start over. It starts over, and it readopts a charter for how it's going to operate that year. And it's typically based on what we did previous years. And so the charter that's shown in here, I believe, is updated, although it's dated September of 2022, so I feel like it's not the most recent one. But it's about the same as what we would have every year. And so if there's anything in here that you wanted to discuss or highlight or emphasize, remove, add, etc., this would be a time for you for us to have that discussion. I know as a participant for the last 7 years, I think it's an important part of what we do, and I think if we were to do nothing to this charter, I think it would go smoothly and would work out really well. I'm not worried that, I'm not saying that there's a crisis that needs to be adjusted and addressed here. I think we're just making sure that, given the time that you have the opportunity to look at it, if there's anything that you wanted to bring up, this would be a good time to do it.
Thank you. Start with David.
Thank you. I don't have any problems with the charge as it exists. I do have problems with the way it has evolved in the past few years. I don't think it's necessarily anybody's intent to do this. It's just the way that it ended up. First of all, it was the intent when ALG was created, that it be there to apportion revenue, to make an estimate on what the revenue was for the next fiscal year and apportion it among the entities that we fund. And in recent years, though, the ALG has not done that. It has not done that for the last 2 years. And it is focused much more on expenses, which is really the role of the Finance Committee, not ALG. And so I would like them to return to their role of apportioning revenue. And I think that's extremely important. And just for an example of that, in both of the last 2 years, there was no agreement to the recommendation until after the budgets were kind of all set and ready for town meeting. So this is my second point, is the timeliness, right? To be effective, the revenue has to be apportioned in the fall, right? If it's not apportioned in the fall, then the superintendent and the town manager cannot use it to construct a budget around that amount, right? And instead, because if ALG has no recommendation, the entities just do their own thing and move forward. So the school committee and the superintendent move forward with their budget without any guidance from ALG, and the town manager and us move forward with the budget without any guidance from ALG, and that's what's happened for the past 2 years. And that goes hand in hand. We can't deal with the expenses in the fall timely manner, because everything is not resolved, right? We're never going to be resolved, and obviously the town manager and the superintendent can't wait until April to say, okay, let's start working on the budget because we now have agreement on what things are going to cost. I just encourage the emphasis there and maybe that needs to be stated even more explicitly, that the point of ALG is to apportion the revenue, the expected revenue for the next fiscal year.
Thank you. Other comments? Jim?
I think the only specific comment I have is weather cancellations don't need to mimic the AB Regional School District anymore because we can meet online. But my general comment is, I've said this before in the context of the DPW discussion, but it's still weighing on me, which is that one thing that's the intent here and the ALG, which I support fully, is to, as it says in the leadership section, timely iterations, good faith consensus, all expected to move. And that has not been happening, I believe, because all three groups have come in with rather specific instructions from their boards. And thus, to adhere to those instructions, they don't have room to, move and make, good faith consensus and have timely iterations. So my recommendation is that the ALG and the boards work on empowering the ALG to really be a group that can develop decisions together rather than a group where different factions kind of present their positions and then, things stop there. I exaggerate a little bit, but I do think it's a trend that's gotten in the way of the ALG being effective.
Thank you. Fran?
I think this is the most up-to-date charter, John, and I think last year was an odd year. It was an odd year for ALG, not coming to consensus. I'm still sore about this too, but not coming to consensus for 30 years, and it was the first year, which was a lot of pressure. But I still believe in the model, and I hope it's easier. I think with different players, they bring different things to the table. So when, yes.
Thank you.
Steve Noon's comment as a committee is as good as its members. That's stuck in my craw, but, there we are. Sorry.
Alyssa?
Thanks. So because I noticed the date was 2022, I went to the 2024 and put them side by side. They are different. The leadership section bullet was 2 times in the 2022, and it's just once in the 2024. And the weather cancellation was updated, because I remember being at the meeting, or at least watching on Zoom, where it was decided that if school was canceled, you could still meet via Zoom. The one thing that I would like to comment on is the sentence in the first paragraph. It's the second sentence. The primary goal of the Acton Leadership Group is to reach consensus on a multi-year financial plan for the town of Acton to recommend to their respective boards. So I think that that touches on 3 things. One is what Jim mentioned, that the ALG is making a recommendation to their boards. And I think you said you'd like to get back to that rather than having the reps come with very specific instructions. And it gets to what you said, David, where you're saying that the intent of the ALG is to apportion revenue rather than looking at expenses. So it could be that both of those things are true and not, then they don't conflict. I just want to point out that it says that it's the primary goal to reach consensus on the multi-year financial plan. I think that the most important thing that this touches upon is the discussion and the disagreement about what consensus needed to be reached. And we heard a lot of back and forth last year about the fact that there were members who firmly believed that consensus needed to be reached on the out years as well, and then members who believed that consensus only needed to be about the FY that we're currently going into. So I think that because, obviously, each year, the charter could be amended, edited by the group, the members that are there, but I'm assuming that it hasn't, that this first paragraph has not changed in 30 years, so I just wanted to highlight that it's right there in black and white that the consensus does need to be reached on the multi-year financial plan, which does include the out years, not just the yellow highlighted one.
Thank you, David.
Maybe the wording needs to be cleared up here. If you look at the bullets under the summary, it's the first one says revenue projection, tax levy and revenues, which was my point, that it's there to apportion revenue. Second one says plan for a multi-year model. Sorry, reserves. Sorry, misread it. Plan for a multi-year model, and the third one says recommend a one-year model. So that has always been the case in my experience. It recommend the next year, plan for future years. Now, maybe that's consensus on all, right? So maybe the wording here is a little, I think we have always reached consensus on all except for last year. But there was never in any ALG an expectation that any year beyond the following year that the model was, what we were working to exactly, right? It was a general trend that we could see. So I just wanted to point that out. Maybe the whole thing needs to be wordsmithed. If only we had a representative on ALG next year who was like to wordsmith things. We'll see.
I do like to wordsmith, but I feel not equipped to do so on this because my very first experience of the ALG attending meetings was last year. And reading the wonderful minutes written by this gal if I wasn't able to get there.
I've been, Ann Chang, I've been involved in the ALG since its inception. And I think, in a sense, David is right, but so is Steve Noon. Because sometimes the select board has been extremely strong, but in the end, the schools always got what they wanted. I think that for the last 2 years, you've paid too much heed to the FinCom's point of view, and they've come in with a point of view and have not been willing to move to a consensus. The idea that you're going to go out 5 years, I think, is ludicrous because you don't know what's happening. So the year that you're working on and the next year are the only two that you can really have any idea about. And to go out 5 years, although everybody has always said, let's go out 5 years, let's go out 5 years, it's never worked because the numbers have just changed. And you will see that when you start a new session. So I think you should probably maybe talk about it a bit, but sort of with a grain of salt, because it's circumstances change and you can't predict. Although I know that some people would like to. But you must realize that this is a very important group, that Don Johnson got a citation from the Massachusetts Municipal Association. Many other towns have tried to do it and have failed, and Acton has done it for 30 years, and I think that just that idea should be continued and kept.
Fran?
In years past, did they only do 2 years out? Or, really? Do we change to 5?
John?
So, yeah, a few years ago, we revamped the entire plan and added 2 years on the end. So it had always been multi-year, but it's only recently been as many years out as it is now.
David?
So I just want to point out that, one alternative is to bring the plan in a little bit, back to 3 years out. But people wanted to look out further. But I wanted to point out two big things that cause the far out years to be incorrect. One is that the year after next, so right now, FY '27, the plan shows it's not in balance, which is fine. But when we get there, it must be in balance. Otherwise, we can't go forward, right? And so because it's in balance and not in balance, FY '28 is further out of balance, and FY '29 is further out of balance. So that really magnifies the problem. It does not indicate that we're going to have such a problem in FY '29. And the second thing, at the Finance Committee's urging, and I think it's a correct thing, the plan does not consider any turnback from the town manager in future years. And we average a turnback, we average a six-figure turnback, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. In the second pandemic year, it was less than $100,000, which is unusual. But the town manager always is, does a good job managing things, always has a turnback. That's not considered. And that's kind of good that it's not considered because, we don't want to count on that, right? Anyway, so first is the fact that the following year out is not in balance, and that gets magnified. And second is we don't consider the turnbacks. And so the out years are wrong, but that doesn't mean they're not valuable, right? To be able to see the trends is important. The numbers at the bottom are less important.
Thank you. Other comments? Jim?
I had a question for people who have had more experience with ALG than I've had. So one thing that's clearly coming up is more conversations about different types of overrides. I mean, the two that I'm aware of are if we reconfigure the DPW plan, it would presumably come back at some point for borrowing. And that would probably be, since that's a pretty good proportion of our, normal annual expenditure, presumably that's going to be done out of an override. And we've also heard about an override coming from the schools. And is the ALG a good body for starting to plot that out and discuss it? Does one, I guess that's really my question.
David?
I think it's kind of the only place we have to do that, to forecast when we might have an override. The debt exclusion kind of override, we have done that for every building project and every significant renovation we have. And I think that's just a fact that when we do a big building thing, the existing operating budgets, whether they be in the schools or the town, cannot absorb the debt service for a new structure. They can absorb, and actually no one asked for an override, for example, for a new heating system for this building, right? And but if where we have to do a significant renovation, like put on an addition like we did on the library or something like that, those always take over. I think that's just the way it is. I mean, I don't see how we could fund it otherwise. But the operating overrides, we could do a better job of forecasting those. And there might be things we could actually do in the model which made it more accurate. We could make it make the imbalance in a previous year affect the next year, so we can easily track that. There are a number of things we could do, right? The statistical things we could do to do a better job in that. And we've always been able to forecast them a year out, except for the most recent override, at least in my experience living in town.
Alyssa?
I'm a little concerned hearing David say statistics, because I'm thinking of that quote. There are lies and damn lies and statistics. I don't know. I don't know if the public would be on board with that. I just want to point out that I think that consensus is going to be critical here, and I'm hopeful that we'll reach that and look back to last year as a blip in an otherwise stellar record. I'm thinking back to the town meeting member who said that the boards have got to come together in order to get the public behind the DPW project. But everything that has to do with the budget, we need to have the boards coming together, the school committee, the finance committee, and the select board. And then also I just wanted to add on to what David said about the out years that are far out, that appearance of a magnified problem because of the compounded skewing that happens. It's not just that, but it's also the fact that several of I know that we're looking at different lines, but there are lines where the number stays the same, even though we know it's going to go up. But we have to just stick with the same number because we can't count on it. We don't know how much it's going to go up. So I think that, I think that should be something that we discuss at ALG, Dean and I with the other representatives, to see if maybe people would be, I don't know why, who requested that we go to 5 out years instead of 3, but maybe we bring it back a bit. We'll see what they think.
Fran?
Is the DPW going to be in this year's fall? I'm trying to be funny.
So I'll take the bait. I've been interested in the run-up before town meeting and then comments that folks have sent to the board and me personally later on about why can't you do the DPW building without borrowing? So folks should think about that. When you bought your house, did you just have enough cash floating around in the savings bank to pay? My neighbor's house is on the market right now, $1.2 million. Nobody has that kind of money. No town has that kind of money. You have to borrow. And although it might look like the town's got a huge budget, it doesn't have a huge enough budget to be able to finance something without borrowing. Folks should accept the fact that when they buy a house, they're going to get a 25 or 30-year note and pay that off with borrowing. The town has to do the same thing. The schools have to do the same thing. So maybe the size of the borrowing is something that sticks in folks' craw, but I think it's quite obvious. If we had enough money just floating around in the couch cushions in this place to be able to pay for a $34 million DPW building, then obviously our taxes are too high. That's not the case. You end up having to borrow, and we have to keep repeating that to folks, not only the citizens, but members of some of the other boards and committees represented in ALG have to be reminded of that as well, is that town is not that much different than your own family. Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Nope, okay. Moving ahead. Approved notice of intent to Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources for Climate Leader Communities Decarbonization Accelerator Grant Consideration. Mr. Manager.
Thank you. So because of the excellent work that people that have been involved in environmental and sustainability measures over the last 10 years or more, we're considered a climate leader by the Commonwealth. We went to an event in Watertown a few weeks ago to receive that recognition. And as part of that recognition, we're eligible for a $1 million grant, which is meant to be sort of, for the past 10 to 15 years, we could do green community grants, which are typically smaller in the $100,000 range. And this is meant to be sort of the next level. And so we're at the next level. And so what we're proposing is to use that program to fund a large portion of the HVAC project that we had was just being discussed a few moments ago, where we have hired a designer using ARPA funds and energy efficiency funds to do a complete 100% design. We expect to go out to bid later this fiscal year, probably, right? For this project, and we'll have a number known for town meeting, which will be helpful. We think if we can get a $1 million grant from the state, that would be even better. I think that would be a much easier ask of the voters. And I just wanted to also reference the great collaboration we've had with the school district in sharing green community grants over the years. In the past, there's always been sort of a negotiation, maybe you'd call it, or a collaboration, which I like to call it, where we would get a grant for this. We'd get an energy efficient vehicle, they'd get a rooftop thing, and we'd always split it 50-50 more or less. Most recently, though, the school district used the opportunity that we had to close out the Green Community Grants program to chase a $500,000 grant. And so we just said, go for it. Go for the whole thing. Let's not talk about splitting it. And we'll step aside for that, and then we're going to go for this $1 million for the next one that comes up. So in case you were wondering about that, because some of you may have been involved with that in the past, I just wanted to give you that heads up on why we're going for the $1 million all by ourselves. Thanks.
Thank you. Comments, questions from the board? All right, I'd be willing to entertain a motion to support the notice of intent.
I move to approve the notice of intent to the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources for Climate Leader Communities Decarbonization Accelerator Grant consideration.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? No, if not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passed unanimously.
Thank you. I just want to recognize the work of Lauren West. Lauren West is our sustainability analyst, and she's been doing a lot of things for us for the last few years, but particularly over the last 6 months, she's been leading a lot of the efforts that Andrea had been leading, and so I really appreciate Lauren's stepping up and helping us. We hope we'll get this $1 million. I think we will. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that going out under your signature, my signature, the board's signatures?
It would be great if you all could sign it. We could make that, we could print that for you or do it digitally, whichever you prefer.
Okay. I think digital signature sounds
Okay,
good.
digital it is.
Thank you. Hey, item 7, approved next step for Department of Public Works building project. John?
Hi,
Tom,
thank you.
I'm looking at-
We've been talking about the DPW building, and I think we're excited to have the additional funding to continue the process. And what we're proposing to the board, there's a building committee, but we wanted to make sure the board is comfortable with what we want to do before we engage again with the building committee. And here's what we're thinking. So there was a lot of work that went into this project. The feasibility study went back to 2020, 2021. The organization itself hasn't changed much in that time, so we know that the needs of what we need are the same. But other things have changed. The market conditions have changed, and all kinds of other things have changed. So we think that the very first step that we should take is a peer review of the proposed design and the feasibility study. And we have engaged in the past with a group called Arrow Street, which is the company that designed the Boardwalk School. So they're good. And they also are the ones that did the townwide facility and electrification study. So they're familiar with us, they're familiar with our buildings. They've actually been through the DPW building before we told them, no, don't bother doing that one because we're doing a major design, we don't need it. Anyways, we'd like to bring them in, we've already had a conversation, and hire them to do a peer review of the design, of the condition, of the idea of what would it cost to renovate this building? And when we know it would be expensive, and it was determined that it would be cost prohibitive and not a good use of resources, but that was what our understanding of the situation a few years ago. We think it's worth, and we think we heard from the people that it's worth taking a second look at that. So that would be our first step, is peer review. Hopefully they can do that within a month or two. And then I'd say we'd go from there. And going from there would be whatever they recommend. The board could decide if it changes our course. And there are several options that the board can consider if that is the case. It could go back to the original idea of phasing it. It could go and change the design entirely. I think it's worth just taking a step back, seeing what this third party says before the board and we make a decision on how to move forward. Anything to add?
Thank you. So you said that you thought the peer review might be something that could be put together in the next month or so?
The final document will take a few months, but we're hoping that the Arrow Street team can come out to the site and start making some headway on that report within the month.
Okay. Just looking at the logistics of it and involving the building committee, I don't think it's likely that I'll be able to get a building committee meeting together probably before July, just due to some issues in my schedule. So I would be inclined to have you move ahead, and then as the peer review is in its final stages, then hand that off to the building committee for review. But I could certainly be persuaded one way or another. I'd hate to hold off on everything until July in order to give you the go-ahead. I think one of the problems we had through the entire process last year was that we didn't have enough time between when we got going and when we had to bring it to town meeting. So I'd be inclined to push ahead, and I will reach out to the building committee to look at the possibility of a meeting maybe sometime in mid-July. Certainly, all of us will have more opportunity to weigh in on it between now and then. Thoughts, Alyssa?
So I'm assuming that you have a vice chair, and I am not familiar with everybody's skill set on the DPW building committee, but I wonder if it might be useful, depending on that skill set of each member, for them to weigh in on specific questions that might be answered in this peer review. I'm just thinking one question I have with absolutely no skill set around architecture, engineering. I would like to know if the peer review will include a structural stability analysis of the building, because I know that in the outreach, Dean, you mentioned seismic activity. I'm wondering, how likely is it that, a wall will collapse, the one that we saw the photographs of where the concrete blocks have shifted and, crush very expensive equipment or valuable employees inside? So I'm just wondering if even if you can't be there, if a vice chair could, and Tom could run that meeting, if that would be useful for the peer review.
Yeah, I think that's a worthwhile point. Tom, do you have a document that you've put together with Arrow Street about what sort of services they would provide? Maybe we could, whether we have a meeting or not, we could at least circulate that around amongst the members.
We're waiting for a proposal for the scope of services. We had a meeting, John, myself, Andrea, and the Arrow Street team on the 20th, and sent them a lot of documents, the feasibility study, the 40% design, and the way we left the meeting was that they would create the scope and send it over, so we're just checking with them to see where that is in the process. So we anticipate on having that shortly, but we don't have it in hand right now.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
I think a central issue that wasn't present when the feasibility study was being done is that we had this, on the one hand, here's the building that needs to get built, and on the other hand, this is too much money for the town voters to accept it. So, that was the painful split between the select board and the FinCom about, you have this thing that's necessary and impossible, so what do you do? And I wanted to make sure that Arrow Street was aware of that dilemma, and we're thinking about that. It would be, I think, a waste of time for them to simply go through the feasibility study and the partial design and go, oh yeah, this is fine. Because then we're left with the same project that didn't pass. So I guess I was hoping that they would be, or whether this is later in the process or what, where's the part in the process where we go, how can we rethink this in such a way that, it can be explained in a way that can, reach the voters?
Thank you. Fran?
I think that was a question. It felt like a question. So that is part of what they'll be looking at. It's sort of some high-level concepts for us to consider in addition to just, they're not just checking their math. They're going to look at what they came up with and see if they had any different ideas. And also, I mean, the issue that you raised, they're not going to be able to solve that. It's just a matter of, I believe the building committee, through the direction of the select board and the work of Tom and everyone else that was involved, got that building value engineered pretty far to an economical building, considering that it was brand new. And I think if that type of solution isn't what the board wants to move forward with, I think the board can give us direction to say, do something that improves the situation, if not everything. And then that would be a different project. And so I think having our street go through it, take a second look at it, look at the actual updated information, see if there's any additional ideas. And if they come back and say, no, you need a new building, look kind of like that, then I think the board will have to give us direction to say, let's try this again, or let's take a step back and try a totally different approach. And you could have that, you could say that now, but I think it's worth having a third party take a look at it before you make such a decision.
Fran?
I'm like a dog with a bone. I'm in the camp of, let's use what we have. I like our original design, and I also am feeling much more hopeful. And I think we need to get the Finance Committee on board. I'm not so much worried about the voters as much as the Finance Committee supporting it. I think that's a huge thing, so.
Thank you. Alyssa?
So just going back to Jim's question and John's answer about the scope of work, including potentially other options, if we might be presented with, here's what you can do to make some improvement, that will come out of this, as well as looking at what it would cost to renovate the existing building, because we could just take pieces of that. Is that what you're saying? I'm just wondering what other options are going to be presented out of this peer review study for us to discuss, because what we're hearing as a board from Finance Committee and residents who voted no on the ballot question are along the lines of, do it a different way. Don't build a brand new building. Come up with some creative solution. And I'm definitely not supportive because of the suggestions to, separate the department and have office staff in some, office building that we rent, and then the crew somewhere else, because we need to maintain the cohesion of the department, because we're addressing the outfall from other departments not being all together. So I'm not supportive of that one particular suggestion, but there may be others about creative ways to renovate either the garage or the office part, and I'm just wondering, will that come out of this?
Yeah, I think it'll give us updated information about what it would cost to build, to bring the current building up to code. Because I think I know, and I think the board has acknowledged the same, is that we could bring that building up to code and it would be safe, but it would still be inadequate. But I think having the number for what it would cost to have a building that, even though it's inadequate, at least it's up to code, that's a number that we had, and I think it's worth getting an updated number on that, just as if nothing else, as a talking point. Because we've heard a few people say, just fix up the one you have. And it's very expensive to do that, and we just want to be clear about what that actually cost is. And so this, Arrow Street will be able to give us an updated sense of what that cost would be. And from that, if we want, we could build ideas from that.
So thank you for that. I just want to acknowledge that I've been operating under a different understanding, that there were code violations that could not be remedied without building new. So it sounds like I was mistaken on that. We'll find out after we get the report, I guess.
You can spend as much money as ever and make anything code compliant. It would mean you can increase the ceiling height. You know, is that a good investment in a building but you could do it, right? So we would need to know what that cost is to be able to say, yes, we can bring this up to code and we can make it safe to put a Mack truck up on a lift. We would just need to raise the ceiling 6 feet, and this is what it would cost to do that, for example.
David?
So I heard a few different things, both from the Finance Committee and at town meeting, and also anecdotally from talking to people around town. People who spoke with me thought that, it wasn't justified enough, or it wasn't, some options were not fully explored. And I think we should do that in a clever way, and I'll come back to that. But I don't think that we should wholesale redesign the building, right? The building cost us over $1 million to design. I think it would be a tremendous waste of the taxpayers' money to design something again. So I'll stop there, and then I'll continue with what I mean by a clever way. I do not think we should evaluate what it would cost to bring the current building up to code doing what it does now. I think that's also a waste of money. I think we need to be a little bit more clever. For example, is it possible to use the existing structure just as the garage? Take the offices out, reinforce the walls as necessary, maybe insulate, I don't know what, right? Is it possible to use the old building as a garage with some upgrade, or what would that cost? I'm sure it's possible, like John said. I'm sure it's possible. I'll point out that renovating Douglas School, which was estimated, would have cost 85% of the cost of the Twin School, right? So we could have renovated Douglas. I think we have a school committee member here. My recollection is $99 million to renovate Douglas, or $117 million to build a Twin School, right? So it is really expensive to renovate old structures and bring them up to current code. Not only has the code changed, but the building has deteriorated, so it's gone the other way. So I do not think it's a waste of money to have in my opinion, to have Arrow Street look into how to manage the air quality in that building for office workers, right? And people working in that facility, in mechanics bays and everything else. If we keep that building, I think we should consider using it as a garage, and what would it cost to keep as a garage? I think we should adapt the current design without redesigning it to do what we came up with at the end, maybe even add the wash bay back, since that's a key environmental thing. And there are a couple other really small things that I might consider adding back that are structurally inherent in the building. They're really hard to add later. But the biggest of those is the wash bay. So that's two things. And the final thing is, almost all the questions that I heard were surrounding the garage, right? The people were concerned about the whole square footage of the whole structure. And I've talked to people even since, and most people were reasonably happy with the office space, the shops, and the mechanic space. They were wondering why we needed so many square feet. And I think we can justify the square feet, but that was the question to me. And so the other thing I would like to see Arrow Street concentrate on is clever ways of dealing with the garage. I suggested one to the building committee, probably too late, and then mine is not the only one. Was it be possible to have a really inexpensive second garage for off-season storage, right? So I have my closet where I keep my current season clothes, and I have my closet out back where I keep my off-season clothes, and then once a year I have to swap my clothes. And in the summer I put the plow trucks and stuff in the back, and I bring the trailers for the mowers and whatever else, the chipper, the bucket truck, and I bring that stuff up. I don't even know if that saves money. But that's the kind of evaluation I would like to see from Arrow Street, is looking at some clever ideas in that way. I think otherwise we're not going to get the I'm very much in favor of this peer review process, but I'm in favor of it, to look for cleverness surrounding reuse of the building and details of the current design.
Thank you. Fran?
Whether this is relevant or not, I've taken it upon myself to visit. I'm touring DPWs. I went to Bedford Friday, which was very interesting. I would love the wash bay to be included again. They even need a second wash bay, which they're going to build off-site. Now, I don't know if you know where Bedford's DPW is. It's sort of an urban setting near a strip mall in Bedford. I'm trying to see if I can present this in a slideshow, which might be helpful, and just document how many employees and how many, what's the square footage, and they have an awesome garage for all their trucks. They're in a tricky situation because they're have a lot of conservation and riverbeds near the building. So this huge generator sits in a valuable parking spot of a truck that could be inside. But it's pretty interesting. I'm trying to get into Billerica this week sometime, which is a newer building. It's like a year old. It's been fun.
Great, thank you. Alyssa?
I just wanted to disagree with David, which doesn't happen often. I don't think it would be a waste of time to show the cost of renovating, because we told voters it would be more expensive to renovate this building than to tear it down and build new, and they weren't convinced. So I think that if that helped the Boardwalk campus debt exclusion pass at the ballot and town meeting, then the value in spending the money to analyze the cost of renovating the building 3 years on, 4 years on from when we originally did the feasibility study, I think that would be highly valuable. I also heard from lots of voters that they were skeptical not only of the size of the garage, but the amenities. Why do they need showers? Why can't they just get in their cars and take a shower when they get home? Why do they need a conference room? Those amenities were questioned. And I think that tying this peer review that I'm supportive of for the same reasons David is, with a market analysis that you could do with your real estate background, I think would be a nice pair of tools that we can use in outreach.
And I was taking lots of photos. So it was fun. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bruce O'Connor Jr., Main Street. Just to add, I appreciate what you're saying, David, here. I think that there should be these other sort of maybe less formal approaches or alternative approaches. I know we've already spent $1 million whatever to have it designed, but it's ending up with a building that I think a lot of people think is too expensive, even with the value design or trying to do that. And so if you have to spend another $1 million to save $4 million or $5 million, we're still ahead of the game. I would encourage you to look, I haven't looked at it myself here, but when I was trying to research what was going on for our DPW, Hudson in 2023 apparently has one that's, that they're putting up. They've already, I think they voted to at least approve it. That was about 24 million and about roughly the same square footage. And so I'd encourage you to look at that as, what is it they're able to do? I mean, they've got about as many road miles as we do, so I assume they have the same number of trucks. Maybe they don't have the same number of population, but I was just trying to figure if that's a fair comparison. So as part of the review, maybe, look at these, split up things. It doesn't have to be this one perfect type of thing. Many years ago, they built this building and they said, it isn't going to be perfect, it's going to be undersized to begin with. This is our opportunity. I guess unfortunately, I have to do the same thing. We can't get everything we want because I don't know if the voters will approve it. And I like the approach there and just try and see what our neighbors are doing.
Thank you. David?
Yeah, two things. One is I appreciate Mr. Conant's comments. I just wanted to point out that different towns include different things in their DPWs. Some include their landscaping crews as part of the DPW like we do, others do not, and they have a separate building for the landscaping crews. So you have to be careful comparing square footage to square footage. And also, we do our equipment maintenance ourselves and even for other departments. So fire trucks and police cars are also maintained at the DPW facility. I would say that's rare. And we believe that saves us money. So it's and that the mechanic space takes space. So it's a tough call. And I don't know if we're disagreeing or not. I certainly do not mind doing a back of the envelope calculation of what it would take to renovate the current building. I am really hesitant to spend a lot of time there because it can't have a good outcome, right? If you talk about all the things like the air quality stuff, you're replacing the entire building as part of the renovation. Right, so I don't want to waste the taxpayers' money, but I do want, so if we're doing a back of the envelope calculation, I am completely on board with that. Because, we need a number that, we can give to people. And for renovating the Douglas School, I'm not exactly sure how detailed that was. I could go back and look, I probably have that information. But the people on the Finance Committee, some of them, definitely suggested using the old building for the garage. And that, first of all, is cheaper because you don't have to worry about air quality for, if nobody works there, even if the mechanics go in the new space and you're just driving trucks in and then walking over to the new space, you don't have to worry about the air quality it's a much simpler, quote, renovation. That appeals to me because it has a possibility of working. So I think it has there's some potential value over putting in that money. That's all.
Thank you. So, Tom, I will work with you offline on getting the information from Arrow Street and also trying to work out a time schedule where we can get the committee, building committee together. But I think it's probably important that you and the town manager move ahead with what you've got planned with Arrow Street. And, we'll loop in the building committee as quickly as possible. Thank you. Down to consent items. So, item 8, approved meeting minutes, May 12th and 19, 2025.
Hold.
Item 9, approve executive session from May 12th, 2025. Item 10, approve letter of support for One Stop for Growth. Item 11, Approve amended Northwest Public Health Coalition intermunicipal agreement. Number 12, approve a one-day malt and wine license application for Dirigible Brewing Company at Powder Mill Animal Hospital, 77 Powder Mill Road, on June 13th, 2025, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Number 13, approve a farmers market winery and malt applications for Acton Boxborough Farmers Market at 19 Elm Street from June 15th to October 12th, 2025, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Should include Dirigible Brewing and Broken Creek Vineyard. Item 14, appoint David Shana from associate to full member for the Zoning Board of Appeals with a current term to expire on June 30th, 2027.
Move to approve consent items 9 through 14.
Second.
All in favor of approving consent items 9 through 14, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Okay, back to item 8. David.
Yeah, after the minutes were in the packet, Jim found an error with a vote on number 5 at our last meeting. It's listed in the minutes as 401. It should have been 302 with Jim and myself abstaining. So I would just like to amend the minutes with that change and then move to approve the minutes of May 12th and 19th as amended.
Okay, comments? Can I get a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Thank you. Looking for one more motion.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Thank you. See you all Monday night, Monday afternoon.